We are live with the Club and Sub recap episode from Blades versus Volkov this past Saturday. As usual, I'm your host, John Stargarian, MMA. With me are Luke, it's SWR @_betting, C. Hansen, Danny Lags, and today we're actually joined by a very special guest, Gillian, the Savage Robertson, actually graced us with her presence here. Really thankful for that. How are you doing today, Gillian?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing awesome. Really happy you can make it on here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I'm just going to get into, obviously this was an awesome win this past weekend. We discussed it a bit before we went live here, but I kind of figured you'd be able to take Courtney down, but I was kind of, I was really impressed with how, you've always been pretty aggressive in passing, but you seemed a lot more patient and composed this weekend and obviously still managed to pass. Was that part of the game plan at all? Just being kind of more controlled when you were on top of her?
I knew that she had a dangerous guard, so I didn't really want to get caught in the guard too much. I was playing more of a half guard game no matter what. And she has really good hips and she's really flexible. So it was she gave me a little bit of she was constantly testing my base and making it tough for me to really get any strikes off or posture up and really do some damage. So it's she is good, she's still she's no scrub on the ground.
No, definitely not. And you actually, that you were actually able to get through her guard pretty easily there, and then eventually finish her. I kind of figured you just kind of dominated her on top for 15 minutes, but that must feel good, right?
Yeah, no, it's I feel there's some performances. Honestly, there's only 2 fights that I've ever had, and that was against Molly McCann and Sarah Frodo, where I was I really felt like I went out there and I performed to the best of my ability at that time. Now I feel like I'm better than both those fights, but at that time, that was the best Gillian that I could be. And it's in this fight, I don't necessarily feel like I went out there and really showcased all my skills.
So, was there anything in particular that, you think you should have done differently?
I guess just little things. I've been really working, defensively with my striking, with my head movement. And I took a little bit too much damage. And then Courtney doesn't have the best wrestling defense. So I got away with some of my shots, but they were shitty shots. I shouldn't have been shooting from that far out, or just little mistakes that I don't necessarily make in training all the time that I was making in the fight.
And then I guess my last question on this would be, did you have anybody in training that you were sparring with that could effectively mimic what Courtney will show you, especially from guard?
I had a few different people. I've been working at a couple of different gyms around the area. Hinato Tavares, Jensen Beach, and Gamblers Jiu-Jitsu have both been 2 gyms that they've had tons of bodies for me to work with. So I've been able to work with a lot of high-level jiu-jitsu people.
That's awesome. And then one other thing I wanted to touch on here briefly. So obviously this was, I guess, your first camp outside of American Top Team. How, what was the transition like? Do you think it optimized your game at all? Is there was it different at all, or how was it different? I guess was my question.
Obviously, everybody's limited with training partners at the moment, just with the coronavirus. There hasn't been gyms open. So I didn't have the same amount of bodies, but I wouldn't have had those bodies anyway if I was at ATT, just because of the situation the world's in. But I've gotten a lot of one-on-one attention with my coach, where Dean's been putting an hour and a half, 2 hours with me in the morning, and then the same at night. So we've constantly been working, and we've really never taken a day off through the whole coronavirus.
That's awesome. It's good to hear. Luke, do you have any questions for Gillian?
Yeah, thanks again, real quick, Gillian, for taking the time out. Really appreciate it. We did touch on that you left ATT earlier this year, but I did want to ask you about one girl who I believe you did train with there for a little bit, and who also just made her debut a couple weeks back, in Mariah Agapova. I don't know, can you just speak to maybe your experience on training with her and what you think of her as an overall fighter?
No, I love her. She's as scrappy as anything. I feel like she's a really long, lanky southpaw, so it makes it awkward to fight her. It makes it awkward to train with her. And where she doesn't have necessarily she's not 100% technical on the ground, she's just scrappy, so it makes her hard to submit. She's constantly moving, constantly working, and she's young too. I think she's 21, 22 years old. So she's definitely going to be an up-and-comer in the division.
That's great. That's great to hear. One more quick thing for you. We did touch on that you're also going to be fighting or grappling, I should say, at the upcoming Submission Underground event. I guess just talk to us about kind of how that came about and what do you think of your upcoming opponent, Amanda Lowen?
So I was just, after my fight, I was just like sitting there on the airplane home, and I saw a Sub Underground posted the card, and they said it was Jessica I versus Amanda Lowen, and I was just like, no, what, I'm bored. I got nothing to do, so I commented on it, and I was like excited to see Jessica I and Amanda Lowen tonight, and available if you guys need an opponent for the next Sub Underground. And then I didn't know I was gonna get that. Like, I just wrote the comment for fun, and then I was watching it later, and Chael on it, he was like, and we've already got a next opponent for Amanda Lowen. Gillian Robertson will be there. I was like, oh shit, it's happening. So yeah, I didn't know about it till I heard Chael say it on the TV.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have to do any like specialized training for that or anything, or it's just kind of like straightforward?
I'm not necessarily going to. It's coming up in 20 days, and I'm confident in my jiu-jitsu. So it's like, generally you just got to watch out for footlocks more. I feel like with jiu-jitsu girls, they're just going to try to play that game a lot more. So just got to be cautious of my feet. But I work with a lot of high-level people, and like I said, at Gamblers Jiu-Jitsu, they have a couple black belt girls that I can work with. So they're going to give me that look. Yeah,
that makes sense. And then I guess we kind of just answered it. Do you sort of game plan going into it? So, C, do you have any questions for Gillian?
Yeah, what do you think about the Burns-Usman fight?
That's a tough situation. I mean, fighting your teammate, like, that's just like, I don't know how to I wouldn't know how to necessarily approach that. You know, you guys literally see each other every single day on the mat, and then you're gonna like step in the cage against them. But it's like, at the end of the day, they're not paying your bills, you know? They're not going to pay your bills, so you got to go and take what's yours. And it's an interesting matchup, definitely. Gilbert's been looking good lately, but obviously Usman's a monster. I think Gilbert has a chance to win it.
Interesting. That will not be good for my bank account if that happens. Do you have you had any I guess maybe the answer is kind of obvious, but are there any like tendencies that are exploitable, like from sparring, if you like fight a teammate? I don't know if you have experience with that.
I've never had to fight a teammate, so I don't know. That's just a weird scenario. It's like they obviously, like, it makes me curious of how their sparring rounds go in the gym, because they obviously both think that they can win it. Right. So I'm wondering, like how does sparring go, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess to add in there real quick, do you think Gilbert can knock Kamaru out?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility.
So you want to keep
talking about that all week?
Yeah,
go ahead, C.
The only other question I got, Rose versus Jessica. Who do you think takes it this time?
Honestly, like, if you watching the first fight, Rose was piecing her up until that happened. So it's like, I still see it go. I see it going Rose's way. Like, I don't necessarily see Jessica being able to pull the same shit off twice in a row. And I see that, like, that was her only like chance to win, because she looked terrible on the feet with her, and Rose is a beast on the ground too. So
yeah, that makes sense. How about Rebus and Paige?
I've trained with Rebus a lot, so I'd have to go with her. Like, she's good on the feet. She's a judo black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt, and it's a legit jiu-jitsu black belt. You know, like, she's good on the ground, and so yeah, I'd have to go with Rebus.
That makes sense. Legs, what do you got?
So thank you again for coming on. But
thank you.
So I guess my question, we talked a little bit before going live about future UFC events. You want to talk more about that, I guess?
About what I'm going to be on?
Like future talks, like future matchups, I guess. Like, what do you like, who are you eyeing, I guess, in your vision? What would be a good matchup for you?
Honestly, it doesn't matter to me. I don't know. I don't look much into it. I just Dean and Mick Maynard are really close. They're always talking about me. So I just let them talk, and then he comes back to me with the name. And he usually already said yes before I say anything. So we just take whatever fight is handed me.
Fair enough.
Well, that's awesome.
Right.
Actually, one more question. If you don't have anything else, Lags, do you?
No, I'm good. No, go ahead.
One more question.
Yeah, touched it all.
There's a lot of like kind of chaos at 125 at the moment. Like people like yourself, like a lot of young people, like Mariah coming up through the ranks. Do you have like? I guess I'd ask. I mean, I know you said you don't care who you fight, but like, would you prefer someone ranked at this point? Especially given Courtney Casey was ranked for years, strawweight, which has generally been a deeper division.
Well, yeah, Courtney got ranked as a flyweight after her last fight, so she was ranked 15. So beating her, I'm assuming I'm taking that spot. So yeah, I would love someone ranked, but if they don't give me someone ranked, I'm still cool with that. I'm there to fight. I'm there to just keep on racking up wins and keep on subbing girls. Like I just beat the record for the most subs in the division. I'm not trying to let any of these girls catch up to that.
Well, I think all of us agree that we think your upside is considerably higher than the next few people in front of you. So we're looking forward to seeing it. Anybody have anything else for Gillian while she's on?
No, I guess thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks
Really
for coming
appreciate
on.
it.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gillian. We're rooting for you. So both in show. So again, next time you fight,
All right, it's nice talking to you.
have a good one.
You too.
Thank you.
Oh, crap. There we go. All right. So that was Gillian Robertson. You can find her on Twitter at savage_UFC. We thank her for talking with us tonight. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. So with that in mind, we're going to jump into a recap from Blades Volkov. If you want to hear our preview show, that's going to be Wednesday night at either 9 or 10:30, depending what our friend Quinn is doing that night. And then we will also be on the Wednesday night show announcing the winner of C's $500 contest, because this past week, Jim Miller got a sub, and the contest was Jim Miller or Bobby Green. So that will be Wednesday, probably in the middle of the show, so some of you can't just jump in and get out of there. But yeah, so preview show and winner announcement is going to be Wednesday. So with that, we will jump into this card, and this card started off a really interesting fight. We got Austin Hubbard, Max Ruskoff. Luke, I know you had a bet on this fight. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I guess I'll preface by saying that this entire card was my worst night in terms of betting in the last 3 years. I lost 6.12 units. Yeah, so we'll definitely get into it as all these fights unfold. But in regards to this particular matchup, I think I put a little too much confidence in the newcomer in terms of, because, I mean, you did touch on it on the pod we did last week too, John, that the guy hasn't went a solid 15 minutes. So that's definitely something I need to take into consideration going forward. But in terms of how it actually played out, I was really surprised. I thought I know Max did take him down a few times, but Austin showed a lot more resistance in terms of the grappling than I thought he would. Even, like I said, I know he did get taken down, but he wasn't really ever held or controlled for extensive periods of time. He also did a really good job of just like getting to a hip and being defensively responsible, which I didn't think would necessarily be the case given how much of an opportunistic grappler Max is. And then, yeah, pretty much what we saw in the second round, that he was completely done, whether that was cardio. And then he obviously talked about how he was emotionally checked out as well, too, because we didn't see any shots from him at all. From what I recall, at least in that second round. So
yeah, just like an Imanari roll, I think, right off the bat in round 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ultimately, not a good bet. And props to Hubbard, but I'm still, even with that bet though, I'm still not sold on Austin Hubbard. I'm curious to see who they give him next. If they give him that Joe Selecki fight again, I will be betting Joe Selecki there, though. I will tell you that.
C, did you have any thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I think last week, I think most people had somewhat similar opinions on this. I guess it's just like Max's cardio is kind of unknown. There was like this 2-week period that's kind of like a blur based on like what he said where he was injured. And then actually like right before the fight, I just like threw in Max by sub was like plus like 120 or something, and Hubbard by knockout was like plus 550. So I just stabbed them both. And I was going to play the under, and then I was like, this is way better odds. Like, didn't really make sense. Figured both their win conditions were pretty much that. Either Max was going to gas out, or he's going to get like an early round 1 sub, and then, Hubbard, decent distance striker, versus someone like Max who's got like pretty big holes defensively on the feet. So yeah, I mean, overall, I don't know, not much to take from the Hubbard side. And then Max's side, guy just needs a little bit more time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Legs, do you have any thoughts here, any plays?
So I only had a small play here. I just had I had Max inside the distance, or Max by sub at plus 210. So, I mean, you guys pretty much touched on it, that we probably shouldn't be trusting these new up-and-coming fighters, less than, 10 fights. So lesson going forward, no, definitely not going to bet on the newcomers or anybody probably under 10 fights, or just look into those fights and see how they progressed. So.
Yeah, it's a good point. I had no play here. I pondered playing Hubbard, but kind of to your point, Luke, I had originally bet Selecki, and after seeing that fight, I am decently confident Selecki would have manhandled him, to be honest with you, because Hubbard basically did every single thing I was worried about in the grappling, defending takedowns with guillotines, giving his back up in the clinch. And we've at least seen Selecki control UFC caliber opponents for 3 full rounds. So I think he would have smashed him. And honestly, I'm not totally convinced, even though, Hubbard obviously won the fight very cleanly. If Max has an 8-week camp and has who knows, maybe his cardio still wouldn't hold up, but maybe it would. And if it did, he probably wins that fight, because he was, you're right, Luke. Hubbard showed some resistance, more resistance than I think was expected. But it's not he probably lost the first round, or it was close, and he was getting put down with a decent amount of consistency.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess my big thing is, to Lags' point, I don't necessarily want to put myself in the box and say that I'm not going to bet debuting fighters or people under. I think it's really just a case by case.
Certain matchups.
Yeah, so I think really
you're right.
What it comes down to in betting these younger fighters, and this is definitely something I'm going to look at going forward, is really seeing how many of those boxes I can check for that guy. And one of those boxes that obviously not checked for Max was him in the latter rounds or winning by decision. Obviously, and then the fact that he only had 5 fights, we didn't really know. He hasn't been a guy who's faced a whole lot of adversity either, which is always something I talk about in betting on younger fighters. So, yeah, overall, it was just a bad bet. But I definitely won't put myself in the box of not betting them. Just going to be a little bit more careful.
I think it depends.
I guess.
Sorry.
I guess to touch what Luke said. Yeah, I guess not to contrarian to what I said. I guess what Luke said, just the matchups. For instance, Agapova Cyphers, that was a perfect matchup for that debuting fighter. So I mean, in certain spots, I think it's a good, but I don't know. It all depends on the matchups, like you talked about.
Well, sorry. Yeah, so Max, there was only honestly 12 minutes of film on him, whereas Agapova Cyphers, for instance, Agapova had, I think, 2 or 3 full Invicta fights. A lot of these LFA guys that come in, you have 4 or 5 full fights worth of data you can look at. Same thing with the Invicta fighters, same thing with the CFFC people. But in this case, the data was just really sparse. But see, what were you going to say before I move on?
I was just going to say, more or less, people who are debuting who have basically, all round 1 finishes, you don't really know anything about their cardio.
Right.
You can just make, you're just kind of guessing. So in a sense, if someone just has a bunch of round 1 finishes and they're not Francis Ngannou, right? You really don't know what's going to happen, especially when you get to the UFC, right? I mean, the level of competition, even with Hubbard, right? It's still a huge gap from what Hubbard just destroys Zach Zane. I mean, there's big steps, so you just have no idea, especially during coronavirus. It's what, cardio anyway is just going to be, a little bit questioned, but yeah, especially when you have 5, first round finishes, you just don't know what they look like outside of that round.
Yeah, agreed. That's a good point. And so we move on. Lauren Murphy, Roxanne Boniferi. I think most of us thought Murphy leaned to Murphy. I I didn't bet it just because I thought, if she got put on the mat, there was a decent chance she'd get held down and beat up. But, kind of my suspicion here was right. Her wrestling is still pretty bad. I'm pretty convinced at this point that Macy tore her ACL in the first 2 minutes of that fight, because there's a moment where you see her wins and she was stuffing Gillian's takedowns, but then she got taken down by Modafferi. It doesn't make much sense. We saw it here. All she really does is kind of push you to the clinch, and Murphy boxed her up. So, yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I don't really have many other thoughts than that. Good on Lauren Murphy. She'll probably get a good fight. Luke, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I think this fight kind of largely played out how I thought, and one of the fights that I actually regret not betting. Not necessarily from a straight perspective, but I think there was a pretty decent line on Lauren Murphy by decision that I was really eyeing pretty hard. And then I ended up passing on. But yeah, like I said, it kind of played out how I thought it would, that Murphy was going to be able to win at range, largely stuffed takedowns. But my one concern there was her getting stuck on the fence too long. There was points where Roxy had her there, but largely I think Lauren looked good. I think this is a real case in point of, we sometimes all create these biases and stigmas on fighters after doing this for so long and researching of people who we kind of would just generally look to fade. But I think this is a really important case study for someone that you probably need to, at least particularly for me, I've never been high on Lauren Murphy. But this is a particular case study where I think you need to be willing to change your opinion on fighters, because I think really that move from her leaving the lab and making all these different transitions between new nutritional coach, strength and conditioning coach, she just seems to be in a great mindset. So I'm not saying that she's going to go out here and win a world title, but I think right now we are seeing the best Lauren Murphy. So I've definitely changed my opinion on her a little bit. I'm curious to see who she draws going forward.
See, any thoughts here?
Passed on this, and I actually was watching golf during this, so I didn't even catch the fight.
Lex, how about you?
So I passed on Roxanne here because I was afraid of Lauren to be able to stop the takedowns, which we saw pretty clearly. And so I actually bet the over 2.5 here. And round 2, I was sweating a little bit when Roxy got a little wobble footed, I guess.
She
got wobbled pretty bad. But I think her the problem there was she was walking right into the right hand of Lauren. So eventually she just started working in the combos and then just going in and out. So, and then a passion, but tiny little sweat there.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good bet, though, to be honest. That.
Yeah.
She got hit with Lauren's best shot, and Lauren couldn't even really follow up with it. So what are the odds she really put it out there?
And I didn't think Roxanne had much of a chance of finishing her unless she got it to the ground, which I wasn't confident she was going to even get it to the ground. So,
agreed. So we move on. Justin James, Frank Camacho. Let me preface this by saying the amount of people who bet on Matt Frivola, and I give you, Luke, credit for not doing this. Actually, a level-headed man over here, which is why we're friends, taking victory laps for their Matt Frivola bets, because a guy who just got his 9th first-round KO, got a first-round KO, is absolutely insane. You cannot draw – I'm not going to go any more into Camacho Frivola, but you cannot draw a 1-to-1 comparison between Justin James and Matt Frivola. They're not even almost similar fighters. Anyway, that said, James pretty much hit his win condition here. He came forward to brawl, and Frank obliged him with a brawl, and he knocked him out. So, Frank did Frank things, and maybe that chin's catching up with him. I don't know. It could be. So, I'll say that. I had thought Frivola's chances to knock him out were minimal. Maybe they're higher than I thought. Maybe his durability is gone. Luke had touched on that a bit last week, and he's been in some wars. But, that's what I have. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, no real strong opinion. I didn't look too heavily into James. I guess all I will say is Frank, you killed my entire DraftKings slate there that night. So probably many others too. But no, so I guess I can't really talk too much to the analysis on it. But yeah, I did have a bet on Frivola. But yeah, to your point, John, I don't necessarily agree with all the 1-to-1 comparisons saying that just because Camacho got knocked out by this guy now that Frivola would knock him out either. But I guess put it this way, if they rebook Camacho, Frivola. I probably won't be getting dog money on Frivola anymore, so I probably won't be making that bet. But yeah, I mean, solid performance by this new guy. I'd like to see what he draws next.
For sure. See, how about you?
Muay Thai 23 said the Nick Tias army are a load of poop stuffers. Interesting. Yeah, I was on Frank versus Frivola, and I did send a message in the group saying maybe we got bailed on Frank more or less in the sense that he probably, look, he missed weight, don't really know what that was gonna do to him, so yeah, in a sense I somewhat feel I did probably get bailed out on Frank. The weight cut could have just been horrendous, and the worst weight cut you have when you get hit like that, just the impact, you're going out quick after a shitty weight cut, so whatever.
Lex?
Yeah, in the original matchup with Frivola and Camacho, I leaned the under and never played it. And nothing really here. Didn't really expect it. But I'm going to say that Bilal Muhammad, he picked this fight, and he picked James to win it. So
I think he picked every fight right, didn't he?
No. Dude, guys, he's kidding. He posted it after his fight with all the right picks.
I don't think so. I don't think he did, though. I don't know. I don't think he did, though. I thought he posted earlier.
No, I'm pretty sure, after he won, he's this is my night's, predictions, and it was every single fight right.
I could have swore I looked at it, that night, and it was, 4 hours earlier, and it was, during the fights, earlier in the fights. I don't know. But... Yeah, I don't know. I didn't expect it, but I guess to Luke's point, if they rebooked the Frivola Camacho, I would definitely look to back the probably under 1.5 if I get decent money on it. Probably won't get dog money on it, but
yeah. See, you're right. We might have gotten bailed out of Camacho because maybe his durability was shot in the weight cut and he did not look good on the scales. That said, if they rebook, would I put 3 units on plus 105 again? No. I'd put a unit on it. I'd probably put 2 units on plus 150 if I got that. It's possible his durability's gone, but it's kind of my feelings about the actual fight themselves haven't really changed all that much. Yeah, so we move on. We got Gillian Robertson, Courtney Casey. Lads, I know you had money on this, so I will start with you.
Yeah, so she came on earlier in the podcast, and I was the only one here that actually put a bet on her. So I was confident that she was going to be able to take Casey down at will because she had a 39% takedown defense. And I predicted that the only thing that Casey was going to be able to do to win this fight was a guard sub, which I didn't think was likely at all, to be honest. So complete domination by Gillian. So catch my bet.
Yeah, you called it. I got to be honest, this is probably my biggest regret of the entire weekend, to be honest with you, because we all talked about it a lot. And I was I think C had sent a message a month ago being man, Gillian should probably be minus 400 here. And it's yeah, she definitely should be. And then I read way too much stuff and I just let it get in my head. I'm man, she could get guard subs. Bueno Silva guard sub there. And the odds that happening are still so low. I just really regret not being on Gillian here. But yeah, incredible performance. I asked her on it. She wasn't passing as aggressive as usual. She mentioned it, did a great job just sitting in half guard, not really letting her do anything. So yeah, it was impressive. It actually
cardio checked out. It looked good,
big time. And it's my opinion of her stock, and she's definitely top 10, in 125, no question about that. She looked great.
Her versus Cynthia run it.
I would love that actually. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, no surprises. I think it largely played out how I thought as well. I guess in terms of handicapping, I obviously didn't cap her as strongly as I should have. Otherwise, I probably would have had a bet. But no, obviously she got the sub at the end, and I predicted her to win the decision. But yeah, like you said, it largely played out how I thought. I thought she was going to probably get her down and just get loads of top time. But I think in terms of going forward, what's really encouraging to hear from a fighter firsthand that she acknowledged that pretty much the only chance that Courtney Casey had in that fight, assuming this was on the ground, was a guard sub. She spoke to that and said, that's why I hung out in half guard the whole time. I didn't force anything. I was getting solid top time. So it's always good to hear that stuff, especially from younger fighters implementing the correct game plan. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they give her going forward.
Yeah, I agree. See, any thoughts from you here?
Yeah. When the line was like 125 and then it moved like 15 cents, like when I don't know, I got it at like 110 and I just played it for 1.5 units. But like,
Oh,
yeah,
I
like
but you played it. Sorry,
like
put you
yeah.
put you out of there.
No,
Sorry.
like I did, but like originally, like I mean, you're right. Like in the group chat, I was like, dude, Jillian's gonna
Right.
roll here, and then I also messaged like 2 or 3 other people, and pretty much said the same thing. I'm pretty sure I sent to one person. I was like, dude, Jillian's probably gonna look like minus 300 here, and then like the last like week and a half, all I did was like hear like fucking guards up, guards up, guards up, and I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, how is this happening? Like, I'm really letting like somebody like convince me of something that I don't really think's like all that likely. And like one of the conversations I had was like basically like if Jillian's on top of her, like Casey's like probably just not, scrambling back up to her feet. Which she didn't. So yeah, that was like kind of my like one regret. And even like I said, like even before I was like, dude, Gillian like money line and then like Casey like inside the distance is like probably plus EV, and like yeah it was. So
yeah, you're right. I think I'm still scarred from Elliot Royval after how many people said like the same shit and then actually getting burned in that fight. Like I'm just like maybe my grappling reads aren't quite what I thought they were. But yeah, I mean fun fight, great. Yeah, sorry.
I think it was a cardio read. I think for me.
Yeah,
Like,
you made a great call, to be honest with you. I even said favorite or bust last week, and I still didn't play it. Like,
I was literally tempted. Like, I saw the after the weight cut, and then the line didn't move a ton on my book, and then it went back to minus 110 a piece, and I'm like, man, I need to put another unit on this. I think this is crazy, but
you were
I
all
never
over
did.
it.
So
you were all over it, and we will have Legs has another fight similar to that we're going to talk about on Wednesday. So stay tuned, people. But we move on. Marc-Andre Barriault, Oscar Piacotta. Luke, I believe you did hit a bet on this one.
Yeah, only bet I cashed all night. I even said on the podcast that I think that this bet was going to be the easiest one of the night. I don't know if I definitely say that because it was definitely getting into sweat territory at one point. I was like, oh, it looks like a Piacotta now has a chin for the first time. Like the amount of shots he ate early on from Barrio were just unreal. And so I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, if I lose. But no, I think, yeah, it ended up proving out to be a good bet. But in terms of how it played out, I think I ended up originally picking Piacotta, and then I changed my opinion to Barrio like right like last second. But yeah, he's a brooding guy who's going to go forward, and we saw absolutely zero grappling attempts from Oscar Piacotta. So considering that's what Oscar's game plan apparently was to stand and strike with Barrio, definitely no surprises there for me.
Yeah, I agree. See, how about you?
Yeah, so after like the last like 2 fights, I was just sitting there and I was looking at some props and I was like, like MAB like round 2, and I was watching it with one of my friends and I'm like, dude, we just under 2.5 in round 2, and we just hope this thing doesn't go into round 3 and we're fine. Like whatever. If he doesn't win in round 2, like they win round 1. So that was a good little sweat there. I think it was like plus 550 or plus 600. But yeah, no surprise. I mean, the guy gassed after like, I don't know, 4.5 minutes. So he's probably getting cut.
Like 30 seconds ahead of me in the group chat. For whatever reason, my ESPN Plus stream, I don't know why I paid for gigabit internet, but was 30 seconds behind everybody else in the group chat. And I just see WOW in capital letters. And I'm like, what happened? I was starting to get nervous too in there. Like this, it was crazy. Lags, how about you? Did you play anything here?
No, I didn't play anything here, but I was just similar to what Lou said. I was looking at maybe an under, but never really did it. It was I think it was a dumpster fire fight. If you like, I don't know. I leaned very out if you had back side, but I couldn't put my money on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I played 3 units, inside the distance, minus 105. And to your point, Luke, I was like, same thing. I'm like, Piacotta's only chance to win this fight is to grapple. And now he's just going to stand here and shell up and suddenly be able to take punches. Like, what is was like he's preserving his cardio to lose 30-27 is what it looked like, and I was like getting like sick to my stomach as it went like deep into the second round. But fortunately, the quitter was still alive in there, and I mean I think that was a good bet all around there. So yeah.
Speaking of quitters, Warrior was saying that Elliott quit.
Yeah, fuck Tim Elliott. Him and Gino within like 3 weeks of each other. We move on. We move on to Bernardo Van Buren, Tisha Torres. Yeah, I lost 2 units on Van Buren here. Played her -178. I have a couple thoughts. First of all, obviously, I think I underestimated Tisha striking. I also kind of think Van Buren got overwhelmed by the moment, to be honest. Like, everything that we saw from her, like pressuring forward, changing levels, attempting a double, like, willing to throw her hands to get into the pocket and set up takedowns, wasn't there. It was like any time Tisha got close, she tried to like grab her head and clinch up and force her to the fence. And basically every other Brianna fight I've seen, her wrestling's looked real clean and she sets it up real well. And it just wasn't there. And it seemed like she almost got like turned off like the first time Tisha threw a head kick. And she just seemed wide-eyed the whole fight. So yeah, I'm not saying it was a good bet. It clearly wasn't. But it was just like, I think she just basically, I don't know. She wasn't there. And I underestimated Tisha. So Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so I never like to make excuses for a bad bet, or I should say a losing bet. But like this is just one of those really funky scenarios, kind of as you touched on, John, where pretty much everything we saw in tape from Van Buren just did not happen here. And then on the flip side of the coin, I think we also saw like an exponentially better Tisha Torres.
Yeah.
She looked good in the latter rounds for like the first time in 5 years. She threw, she was aggressive. Her takedown defense looked really good. So, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, I lost 2 units, and I guess I look like a jackass, but it's like, I mean, if 2 fighters come in here and they show something that they've never really shown historically, and then I'd lose a bet, it's kind of like, I just kind of chalk it up to that being the variance of the game. Also, just a few other important points to note on that fight is Van Buren's like blast double in space is probably one of her best weapons. We didn't see any takedowns in space. She also caught 3 kicks from Tisha Torres and just didn't decide to pursue takedowns there for whatever reason. Like if there was any easier time for her to get takedowns, it was when those 3 moments when kicks were caught and she just like pushed her off of her and said, I'm going to go back to ribbon. So maybe to your point, John, yeah, it was just like a shell shock by the moment thing. But to me, it was just 2 very uncharacteristic performances by 2 fighters. So I'm personally not going to call it a terrible bet. I'm kind of just chalking it up to variance personally.
Yeah, it's like one of those like 5% of the time weird shit happens in MMA. Like just like really, really weird shit. Like that's C, did you have an opinion here? Did you have a bet here?
No, I said on the podcast I needed like 205 I was targeting, or 200 to play Torres. I didn't get that. But yeah, I mean, I know why. I talked about it briefly. The first time, it's called the AKA effect. It happens. It happens. Magic just said, dude, Pennington and Torres were using a steroid-flavored dildo this day. Pennington suddenly was Triple G.
Oh God, that's great. That is great. Yeah, that was awful. Do you have anything on this fight?
But yeah. I mean, yeah, I had Van Buren tied to a 3-unit parlay with Blades. But yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much touched on it. I guess going forward, I'm going to look more into like the younger fighters versus the like more seasoned fighters, and how well those seasoned fighters, like their durability and what's still left in the tank, I guess. I mean, similar to what you guys said, I think it is more of a variance than, I guess, a bad bet. But overall, I guess I didn't expect the outcome.
Yeah, it was just weird. Like 2.5 minutes into the fight, I was like, I kind of feel like I'm fucked here. Like this is like this.
Yeah, me too. Like I even saw on tape, I didn't really mention on the podcast that like I saw her catching leg kicks before and using them well for takedowns, but didn't happen at all here.
Yeah, and she let her hands go with Souza a lot. And it's not like Tisha was ever really a threat to knock her out. Like it was just bizarre. It was a bizarre performance. Like I can't. But anyway, yeah. So that sucked. So we moved to Bobby Green, Clay Guida. D, you want to take this away?
Yeah. I don't know, whatever. Bobby Green just, like we kind of talked about, like in there, I was just like, okay, I guess Bobby Green's just doing Bobby Green things. I don't know why I would have thought like anything other than that. There was like maybe like a minute and a half where I was like, okay, all right, let's fucking maybe figure this out like sooner rather than later. But yeah, Bobby Green killed the big Lambo parlay I had going. So nice job, Bobby Green.
Lex, how about you?
Bob Green also killed the $1,000 giveaway for the fans.
Yeah, he did.
That's unfortunate.
We'll touch on the next part about the 500.
But I think, I guess, similar to what C said, I mean, I think we need to look more on my tape. If we see Bobby Green doing Bobby Green things all the time, then we just need to I don't know. I stayed away because it was just a shit show. So.
Yeah, I can't blame you. I didn't have any money on it, but like Bobby Green, if you look at every metric of his, you look at how well he rolls strikes, how he does basically everything at a competent or better than competent level. Like I've mentioned it to you guys in a group chat, but it's like if you were to run Bobby Green's career 100 different times, this is in the bottom 10% of possible outcomes. Like what his career has been with close loss after close loss. Like the guy's talented. He has consistently close fights with everybody, with Edson Barboza, with Rashid Magomedov. But then he also has close fights with 38-year-old Clay Guida, who dropped it around to BJ Penn in 2020. So it's like,
I think he just gets too cocky on the feet.
Yeah,
and that's his problem. And that's his problem because then that leads to poor takedown defense.
Yeah, and it's also like an optics thing, I think. So you look like even the Trinaldo fight, like he's hitting him, but then he's like sitting back and kind of smirking at him, and so it seems like he's not really doing that much work, even though he's kind of putting it on him. Like he's fucking idiot. Luke, any thoughts here?
Yeah, you guys pretty much hit on it. I even said on the podcast Wednesday, I compared this fight to Fili Jourdain. I said the line is probably too wide, and Bobby Green is going to make this fight a lot closer than it needs to be.
Yeah.
So absolutely zero surprise for me here. Bobby Green touchdown doing Bobby Green shit. So, I'm glad I stayed far away from this one.
All right, and next up, we had the start of the main card. This was a fun one because this one actually cashed someone $500, which we'll find out on Wednesday when we are going to do a draw live in the middle of the card before we get into the main card. But, C, do you want to touch on Jim Miller versus Roosevelt Roberts?
Yeah, shout out to Jim Miller. We'll give you guys a second opportunity right now if you're watching live. If you go to Club and Sub and you comment and tag Jim Miller, you can enter into the giveaway. So that's all you gotta do. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really super surprised by this. I mean, some people were making like some absurd comments about like Roberts. Shout out to my boy Magic. Unfortunately, Roberts didn't kill him, but Magic did like acknowledge that Miller was like probably around one sub, even though I think he was more than that, but. Not that take. There's one take in particular about like Roberts' level of competition compared to Jim Miller that I was like messaging John about that somebody commented on, and I was like, I don't even know how this is like a valid take. Like, it's like not even like remotely possible for them to like have an equal like to even think that. Didn't make any sense. But yeah, I mean, Jim Miller came out there probably the first time Roberts' legs been chopped like that, and we kind of talked about that. John, and then ground game. I mean, Jim Miller is a black belt, pretty good grappler, definitely the best grappler that Roberts has seen, and Roberts is pretty unexperienced. I mean, he only's got like 10 or 11 fights, so he got himself into a dicey situation. And even Miller said like right after the fight, he was talking about Roberts trying to pull out there, so. Whatever. Shout out to Jim Miller. Still a dog. Hopefully they book him pretty soon. Love that guy.
Luke, I know you also had a bet here. You want to talk about that?
Yep. So 2 weeks in a row, we're making a play 3 hours before the event blows up in my face. I put 3 units on Roosevelt Roberts here, and I fully went into that bet knowing that the win condition for Jim Miller was a round 1 sub, and then lo and behold, that is exactly what happened. So obviously, once again, it's a bad bet, but it's not something in terms of the guy I bet against doing something uncharacteristic necessarily. I fully knew that was a potential possibility, but relatively low chance. So, of course, I've always been relatively lower on Roosevelt Roberts than a lot of people have. And, of course, the one time I jump in to bet him, it crashes and burns for me. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, bad bet, I guess.
Blags, how about you?
So, contrarian to Luke, actually, this is the one time I didn't bet Roosevelt Roberts, just because it was such a short notice. And I didn't like the line. I know it was like minus 255. I thought that was insane for against a tough guy like Jim Miller. So, yeah, it was a pass for me. Good win for Jim, and I'm still high on Roosevelt.
Yeah, so I had a unit Miller plus 220. It's kind of weird. I think a couple thoughts about it because I also kind of agree with C. I think he might have had more. And, Luke, you and I talked about this. I disagreed a bit. I thought he might have had more success if it went on. But obviously, so, first of all, it is a somewhat random outcome, like what happened, anytime a fight goes 2 minutes. That said, I think we learned something about Roberts, though, in general, and that is, I've seen a lot of takes about his submission grappling. And, I've always said – there's a lot of guys, especially when they fight lower level guys, who are really long limbed and they can just get kind of weird guillotines on people. And I think we kind of saw that because they say he's a brown belt, but one of the first days of jiu-jitsu class, if you're a white belt, is learning not to stand up when you have a guy stacked who's attacking an armbar. And literally the only thing he had to do against the fence there was just put his weight down on top of him, and instead he stood up and got tapped, which. I just think it's concerning, and it makes me think his grappling is probably not as strong as, maybe we've been led to believe based on a low level of competition. But, yeah, I'm very happy it didn't play out further and I get to cash my bet. But I also would have liked to see it play out further because I do want to see, on some level we learned that Roberts is more basic in grappling than we thought. But on another level, we really didn't learn if he's improved since the official fight that much, which I was kind of looking forward to finding out. But so, yeah, good on Jim Miller, New Jersey guy, represent. I was pretty pumped about that. Yeah, so we move on. We have Bilal, Muhammad, and Lyman Good. Luke, you want to take this one?
Yep, so this rounds out the shittiest night of the year with I had one unit on Lyman Good, but even after all the bets we've talked about tonight, I do not regret this bet one bit. I think more so of the issue was that Lyman just didn't let his hands go early enough. But that's also taking nothing away from Bilal. I think he utilized a lot of good movement early on, which seemed to really throw off Lyman. I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions. I know the dude had a loss in his family right before as well. So, I mean, we just saw even with Cody Stamen, the guy lost his brother and had a great performance. So, definitely not chalking it up to that. It was a decent performance by Bilal, but I think with the line I got at plus 132 for how competitive it was, I think you could make the case that Lyman won 29-28. I also think you can make the case for that fight being a draw. So I think with all those things being considered, like I said, at plus 132, I didn't hate the bet. So
yeah, I agree. Lags, did you have anything here?
No, I stayed away from it completely. I respected everybody's takes that were on both of these sides, so it was a pass for me. But I mean, I leaned the good side just because I thought he was going to be durable enough in the latter rounds, and that he was going to have the power still to cause Bilal problems. So, I mean, I think it was a good value bet if you guys got in on it early. So
yeah, don't disagree. See, how about you? I know you had plays here.
Yeah, I was on Good for 2 units. This kind of started this and the next one were the downside of the card. But yeah, I mean, beat the closing line by 20 cents. I talked about Good really sitting on his cross, and that's really what landed in round 3 that stumbled Bilal. Bilal's all-time good Twitter guy that everybody loves. But I do think he has some meh parts of his game. Just overall, athletically, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I guess in the first and second round, I don't know. Good didn't really. I don't even know if it was throwing his hands and landing. John and I, we talked about it. Like maybe if Good just even pumps out like 15 to 20 strikes, just throws them, and looks busier than he was. Personally, I thought he won that second round. He landed like the more damage, and even had the better moment of the round, like the last 25 seconds of the round. He had like a good 10 seconds there. And then in round 3, honestly, I think the takedown and taking the back there probably, prevents a 10-8. But then again, only one person had Emmett Shane 10-8 round 3, so who knows?
Yeah, most agree with all of you guys said. I had a unit on Good plus 132 and then a half unit on Decision plus 440. Yeah, so like I don't feel, but like what you said, Luke, I don't feel bad about this at all. We basically had one round that Bilal, like he won the first round, but like it was still a relatively close round, a second round that was super close, and one round that was dominated by Good. And like, look, it's small sample size, but like looking at that fight, it's like I know that I made a good bet on that fight. I can't be upset about it. Like I'm gonna probably get that bet to fall in my favor 4 or 5 times, and that's gonna pay off long term. But yeah, the one thing I didn't really understand, like round 1, I got scoring for Bilal. I'm not saying it's a robbery either, but round 2, it really seemed like Good was walking him down and definitely landed the 3 or 4 hardest shots of the round, especially at the end of the round. I was just kind of a bit surprised at that. Bilal also actually outperformed my expectations on the feet, to be honest. I thought he looked like he leveled up his stand-up a bit. But I mean, it is what it is. I thought Good won. I don't think it's a robbery. I'm also biased. But, yeah, I don't mind the bet. And like C said, I really do think if he had just thrown like 15 to 20 more strikes around, even if they didn't land, he probably just wins on optics alone. So it is what it is. It's minus a unit and a half there. And then we moved on to Marion Renault, Raquel Pennington. Did anybody have a play here tracked? So I stabbed this untracked when it hit during the card. It got up to plus 210 Renault, and I played it because that just seemed Rocky Pennington being plus 210 against anybody with a pulse seems kind of crazy in 2020, or being minus 210, I should say. So I played Renault, pretty small, but she won the first round. I mean, she looked good in the first round. It just turns out that Raquel Pennington figured out that she doesn't know how to defend a tie clinch and just need her over and over and over again for the next 10 minutes. Not really much else to say about it. I actually was kind of surprised Pennington didn't get her out of there, to be honest. Like I think it says more about Pennington that she couldn't get her out of there than Renault. But, I mean, I guess good performance by Rocky. She'll keep her job for now. Renault's 43. She shouldn't have much gas. She probably should hang it up soon. Do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, so in terms of the outcome, I wasn't overtly surprised. I thought Rocky was going to be able to get it done, but I guess the one really interesting thing to me is both girls really let their hands go in the fight, which I touched on last week is something that they have historically struggled with at points, at least in terms of letting them go over the course of 15 minutes. I know Renault largely got boxed up, but she was still in there. She was fighting, she was throwing.
She had some good 1-2s down the middle too.
Yeah, so it was a really good fight. I know a lot of people were saying this one was going to be a stinker, but I think at least in terms of entertainment, it definitely outperformed what people thought. So yeah, I guess I was on the right side in terms of pick, but I guess a little wrong in terms of analysis. I thought it might have been a little bit of a slower paced fight than it was, but yeah, props to Rocky. She looked really good.
Legs, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, not much to go off here. I mean, I lean just Rocky to win a decision, and similar to what Luke just said there, I thought it was going to be a lot slower pace there. So nothing here.
C.
Nothing.
All right, so we move on to a co-main event. This is where it all went south for C. C, what do you got for us here?
Yeah. I played Burgos for 3.2 units. I obviously it's like wasn't like the sharpest player or anything, but I beat the closing line by like 50 cents.
Yeah.
And like to be honest, like there was something like round 1, round 2, like I think people are like, in the judges' eyes, like, I guess it's like hard to, I guess even from my perspective, it's like really hard to tell like how damaging some shots were from Emmett. But in round one, like if you rewatch it, like Shane's like really rolling with those punches, and like, yeah, they sound like good, but like I could see how like you think that they're landing like flush or like really having like meaningful impact. But the way Shane was rolling with those, like, I don't know, man. I honestly think Shane won the first 2 rounds. Shane in the first round, like leg kicks, calf kicks, those don't score well. So I guess I can understand that. But I mean, he hurt Josh to the body in that first round. I think the second round was definitely Shane. So, I mean, Emmett did impress me, I guess, in the sense that, he was able to get off on more than just having his bursts. I think maybe even like his leg, like being like not functioning, maybe just like flip the switch in his brain to kind of like counter Shane more and really pump out his jab. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I talked about this too, like last week. People were saying like Shane doesn't like really have a chin. And I was saying like his reaction both times he's been dropped has been like brilliant. I mean, he got right back up versus Calvin. He was getting right back up to his feet. So I didn't really understand that narrative. So I know a lot of people are like, this and that. Like I didn't expect Shane to have a chin. But I did. I guess the one thing I didn't expect was Josh to pump out that much volume. And Shane kind of, he kind of stayed. I don't know what happened after the first round, but he kind of like avoided kicking the leg. And even after that, I think he, didn't, get off his body work as much as he normally does. I don't know if that's just because of like Josh's power or what, but, normally Shane's like really, really good body puncher. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to like whoever Shane gets next, because I have a feeling it's going to be priced, pretty incorrectly. But we'll see. So yeah, I mean, whatever. Josh I guess he tore his ACL. So hell of a performance by him. He definitely looked a lot better than I was expecting. And yeah, I mean, Shane still does have defensive flaws, but it's more or less, him, trusting his chin too much, because really the way he rolls is really top notch for, 145 and just the UFC in general. People don't normally roll like that. So
seems to be like a big Tiger Schulman thing in general, to be honest. Like all of those guys seem to kind of like just roll more like traditional boxers than strikers.
Yeah, for sure.
Lags, what do you got here?
So I had a 1-unit parlay with Blades doesn't go to decision, with this fight doesn't go to decision, and
oh god.
I'm not gonna say it wasn't a bad bet. I mean, there were definitely a lot of opportunities, I think, and definitely with the output of both guys. So I guess to what C said, I didn't think Berger's chin was as good as he thinks it is. I'm not gonna say it's trash, but I didn't think it was as good as it was on Saturday. So
yeah.
So
Luke,
overall, I mean,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
Luke, you got anything for us?
Yeah, so I guess I was in the minority in the sense that I did think there was a chance that Josh Emmett wins the decision here, but I also will play devil's advocate against myself and say that I thought at least how that was going to be more viable is assuming Josh would mix in wrestling.
Yeah.
Clearly we didn't see that, and we saw actually Josh Emmett, at least in the eyes of the judges, outstrike Shane Burgos over the course of 2 rounds, which I don't think hardly anybody was anticipating, even for the people who got Emmett. So I think I personally scored it for Emmett. I know Steve touched on a lot of things, but that he rolls with the punch as well, he does, but I also don't think you can take that away from Emmett in the sense that he's still hitting him. And I think oftentimes we see in terms of these judges, sometimes it's just because a guy is walking forward and maybe throwing more volume or whatever, he just like auto gives around to him. But I think Emmett just landed so many good shots, whether Shane ate those or not. I think he just hit him with so many flush strikes over the course of that fight. In my opinion, that did enough for him to win the fight. But granted, I mean, you go take that fight to Texas or something, it could be 30-27 Burgos. So, I mean, it's really one of those things. It's just kind of where you're at. It was a close fight. I'm taking nothing away from Shane. Incredible performance by Emmett, but yeah, I'm curious to see who Shane gets next. And I've been pretty vocal about this. I feel like I know his chin did hold up again tonight the other night against a big power puncher, but man, this 145-pound division is just riddled with guys who can hit really hard. I think one of these days, man, he's gonna get knocked out. I just don't think he's gonna be this guy who's gonna be able to take these punches at least for very much long, because the dude, despite being pretty young, has taken a ridiculous amount of damage. So, but granted, like I said, I think the guy's still high level. He's still going to beat a lot of guys. But, definitely curious to see who he draws next.
Yeah, for sure. I actually played, a unit untracked on the Burgos points handicap, -3.5. I believe it was 105. Really bad bet, to be honest. But, I was one of those people that said, look, I never say there's a 0% chance someone could win by X way, because obviously that's not true. But I did say I thought that Emmett was pretty much KO or bust, and I really expected, if you told me Emmett won a decision, I would have said Burgos was afraid of the power. He sat back and kind of let Emmett dictate the pace and lost the close decision like that. That to me was more believable than Emmett coming out and landing. How many significant strikes did he land? 127 significant strikes. That. If you told me that was the case, I would have said that's an under 5% outcome, Emmett landing that many strikes, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I can't it's just a bad read, I guess. But we've never seen Emmett do that in his entire career. So it's it's just frustrating because I really did think that Burgos was going to cut him up as long as it stayed standing. Obviously he didn't. I do sort of agree with C. I did kind of think Emmett won the first 2 rounds. Definitely, or not Emmett, Burgos. Definitely close enough to give him to Emmett, no doubt about it, no issue with the decision. But yeah, I mean, good on Josh Emmett. And as far as Shane goes, I've always been a big fan of his, but I think what you just said, Luke, we're if he doesn't decide to make a fundamental change to his striking, we're 3 to 4 fights away from him turning into Chris Weidman and Chris Weidman basically, and just getting TKO'd every fight. You can't eat that kind of damage that long, And I do think, similar to Gagey, he probably has the talent to make a fundamental style shift and be successful. He's quick, he's athletic, he's clearly got a chin for the moment. So, yeah, is what it is. And with that, we move on to our main event of the evening. It was Curtis Blades, Alex Volkov. Lags, what do you got for us here?
All right, so I had the original parlay with Blades and Van Buren that was already ruined, so I guess we'll talk about that. But I had the Roxanne over 2.5 with Blades money line here, and I expected a Blades early-ish knockout, and I didn't expect a Blades decision here, to be honest. And I guess I thought his cardio was going to look a lot better than it did, but is that from ragdolling him a lot? If it's just laying on top a lot, taking a lot of punches? I don't know. But honestly, I don't think it was a good performance overall, career going forward. It's only harder matchups, I think, at this point. So, not much more to add.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I did say I thought that Blades would definitely have the cardio to go all day. That proved not to be the case. But yeah, there was a lot of people, I saw even on Twitter, that were shitting on the guy's performance or whatever. It's the dude just utterly dominated him. I understand he gassed or whatever, but to me, it played out essentially just how I thought. But then to Blades' point, I saw some of the comments he was going on Twitter, think he was kind of smarting off about the performance too. I was I don't know about that. Might want to tone it down, especially if the boss man is not too happy with you. So,
and he wasn't. But,
what's that?
Dana White wasn't happy at all. He was cussing him out.
Yeah. So, but yeah, ultimately, I think he's still going to be a problem for virtually anybody. Maybe he just needs to, I guess, be more efficient in his grappling. But then again, at the same time, even in the earlier rounds, I don't think he landed like an overt amount of strikes. Like it didn't seem like he exerted a ton of energy. Like he got takedowns relatively easily. Yeah. And then from there, he largely just laid on him. So I guess I don't know what it was.
He only landed 69 significant strikes over the entire fight. And let's see, what are the total strike numbers? 116. But even so, over 5 rounds, that's like not that many.
Yeah, so it is what it is. But I guess in terms of at least how the result was, there was no surprises for me.
Yeah, so I actually, this is going to be the last time I do this, but I actually made back the DGen bets that I lost on, what's her face, Renault and Burgos here. I bet 0.4 units on all 4 of Blades in round 3, Blades in round 4, Blades in round 5, and then Blades by a 5-round unanimous decision, which was plus 750. So quickly grabbed it back, thankfully. Otherwise, I would have felt real shitty about myself if I had lost that too. But just really, I think I agree with much of what you said, Luke. It's weird because like Blades has his skills by themselves, the willingness to attempt takedowns the rate he does with 3-round cardio is probably good enough to beat 98% of heavyweights in the world right now. And so he's definitely top 5. But I said this, and I got some pushback on it on Twitter. I was like, he took a big step back in my eyes, or his stock dropped a lot. And like by that, I mean, I had thought, Lags, you and I have talked about this. I've said I think he's the best heavyweight in the world. And I had thought that. I still to this day kind of think the Francis performances were more variant than they were the performance that we'd see on a consistent basis. But it's hard. Like, so I thought he was the best heavyweight in the world. I now think he's more like 4 or 5. And I think that because it's like Blades will have a lot more resistance, and he may never fight them facing somebody like, say, Stipe or a DC or, just basically any athletic heavyweight who can provide resistance in grappling and cardio, because he was not getting those takedowns with ease late against Volkov, who was giving him no resistance. Like, if someone like Stipe or DC or anyone of that,
I think DC would be a good matchup. That'd be interesting just to see, like,
DC might get
size wise too. That's because that's what I think would happen too. So then, who do you give the advantage on the feet to?
I think DC pretty significantly, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, actually, Blades is improving. It's hard to say, and it's like JDS actually almost fit that mold. Like, he stopped his takedowns, but JDS is obviously can't take a punch anymore. But yeah, so it's like I still think Blades is very good. Having an elite 3-round gas tank and being willing to wrestle is going to beat most heavyweights in the world. But I no longer think he's quite the unstoppable force I thought he was. He's definitely, unless he like deepens his game, going to have some issues in 5-round fights, like going forward. So yeah, is what it is. I cashed that bet. It was a nice way to round out the night. I finished plus 1.23 units, so kept it green for the 3rd event in a row, which was fun. C, did you play anything here?
Well, I tried to do what you do, and then I got greedy about it and just did 4 and 5 and nothing else. Like you sent that, and I was like, oh, well, okay. I was like, forget the decision. I'll just do like 4 and 5 and hope, just for meaningless entertainment. But I think I guess like the one thing with Blades, like in this matchup, is like, or just in general, like I think he needs to like kind of like learn to kind of pick and choose when to like really use his wrestling, because like early on, like he was actually having success like picking off Volkov on the feet. Like I thought he was actually like hurting him, and then all of a sudden he just like decided to shoot. And I think like he kind of just needs to like trust himself, I guess, a little bit more on the feet, and kind of like because like what's gonna happen is like his heavyweight, and like he's basically essentially just gonna like gas himself out like going forward if he's just constantly looking to ragdoll you, and versus somebody like Stipe or DC. They probably have the cardio. I mean, they do have the cardio to kind of just withhold, and then 4 and 5 will just tee off on you.
And probably stop some takedowns too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I just think, if you're Curtis Blades, like obviously striking, doesn't take as much energy. So just kind of like look to mix it up a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, I agree in the sense that like, I do think that like Blade's stock probably went down a little bit. I mean, he doesn't really have any ground and pound. He's really just laying on top of you. And I said this, and I guess I kind of mean it, but like I would probably I'd be interested to see We're Doomed versus Blades. I'm not saying like anything, but I would probably play We're Doomed.
Blades does lay in guard a lot. Like that's
yeah. Like I don't know. Like right after, I was like, yeah, I think I'd even I'd take a stab there. So yeah.
I don't know. Something tells me I feel like he just smashed his face in. Verdum's durability just isn't there. That's before the sub even happens. Like I think it could be like a round one or round two.
Could probably just knock him out on the feet if he wants the fight.
Yeah, maybe
that too.
To your point, real quick, C2, like in terms of being more efficient in striking, like the dude doesn't have to be this big knockout artist or throw in 3-4 punch combos. He's a big guy. All he really needs to do in terms of striking, at least that fits his style, just learn how to work behind your jab a little bit. Just pump the jab out to keep guys honest, and then that'll help also set up your shots. So you might also get a little less resistance in terms of those takedowns. But then on top of it, you'll also be scoring some points too. So, yeah, I mean, he doesn't need to be a Derek Lewis haymaker guy or some big combo puncher like Stipe or something. Like I said, just work on his jab. Learn to work behind your jab as your big guy and help set up your takedowns.
Yeah, and he's got a massive reach too. He's like 6'4", with like an 81-inch reach. So it's like that he should be able to do that. But yeah, so that's gonna be our show tonight. Otis, I see your comment, Weidman or Akhmedov. We'll break that down when we get to that card on Fight Island.
I guess
we'll talk about it.
I guess one more quick thing to add. I guess going forward, I think we need to just look more into not saying certain fights end in certain path to victories. I guess because I think we counted this fight out of we all thought Blades knockout early. I mean,
yeah, I think it's less because like there's definitely win conditions that are incorrectly priced all the time. Like I do believe that pretty firmly. I think it's more just allowing for that weird shit happens. We had that a bunch this card, like in MMA. Like it's not sometimes things that should happen.
We thought Verdum was going to finish Olenek early.
Yeah, that's it. Olenek went 3 rounds and landed 100 significant strikes. Who knew that was coming? Yeah. That's the God. Alexei Olenek and Josh Emmett, if you told me they were going to be the ones to outperform and go win by decision,
Exactly. Nobody would have predicted them by decision. I mean, those decision prices were probably like +700, 800 each.
I'd imagine. I mean, Emmett by decision must have been nice. But that's a good point. But yeah, so guys, Wednesday night we are going to be breaking down the entire Poirier versus Hooker card. All 5 of us will be on that night. We'll send out a time. Hopefully tomorrow for when it's going to be going live. And, if you entered C's contest over the weekend and win $500, we will be drawing a winner in between the prelim main event and main event opener breakdown this weekend or on Wednesday.
Or if you tag Jim Miller.
Or if you tag Jim Miller right now.
On the tweet.
Yeah. Go to the tweet and tag Jim Miller.
Last chance.
Yeah, and you will be entered into the contest, and we will draw it live on Wednesday. But yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm John Stargarian. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox. Luke is sparring with Reality Betting. You can find him at SWR_betting. It's Lags at Lags_the Capper and C at C Hansen 10. Thanks everybody, and we will see you Wednesday night. Bye bye.